This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Okay, the Amari Cooper mini contract holdout saga is now over because Amari Cooper has agreed to a restructured deal with the Cleveland Browns to show up to camp. Now, this has been the offseason of wide receivers threatening to hold out and nobody actually holding out, right? I don't count not showing up to mini camps as actually holding out. Like we talk about training camp, that's holding out. Brandon Ayuk, all that noise about not showing up to camp, he shows up to camp and he doesn't even have a restructured deal. T. Higgins seems like he's gonna show up to camp, not gonna hold out despite threatening to do so earlier. And then you also have Amari Cooper threatening to hold out, agreed to a restructured deal. So at least amongst those three, Amari Cooper actually got something for holding out. But nonetheless, all the wide receivers that we were worried about not showing up all showed up. So what's the contract for Amari Cooper? It's basically the same contract he's on. He's still going to be a free agent after this year. What the Browns did was guarantee him the $20 million that is left in this contract and gave him a raise of $5 million. So, you know, we talked about this before. I said Amari Cooper's projected amount of money, depending on the guarantees, was always going to be between $24 and $26 million. It's about what he's worth. And interestingly enough, if you use Amari Cooper's last deal and then adjust that for it's not inflation, but deflation or whatever you want to call it, and you adjust that for the raise in the salary cap over the years that has happened between him signing that contract, it comes out to about $26 million. So this is just Amari Cooper getting the same percentage that he was getting in 2020, just adjusted to 2024. So $25 million for Amari Cooper. They're going to guarantee $20 million of that contract, and $10 million of it will be given to him as a signing bonus. Now, this is the Browns taking advantage of the fact that they have ownership that is willing to spend cash. Now, if you don't understand why this is the case, let me break down how Amari Cooper's contract was going to work and how it's going to work now. Before, with Amari Cooper's contract, he was owed $20 million, but the $20 million that he had was fully non-guaranteed. And when your money is not guaranteed in the NFL, that means you're paid game to game. You get a little bit of a bonus for training camp. You get a little bit of a bonus for the playoffs, but your base salary is handed to you on a week-by-week basis. Also, in Amari Cooper's contract, since, again, the last part of it was not guaranteed, who knows how much of that base salary was affected by other incentives, right? Staying healthy, getting to a certain yard number, all of these things that might have been incentive laden to get the deal to technically be $20 million. Now are fully guaranteed. So now Amari Cooper does not have to worry about, hey, if I'm injured for a few weeks in 2024, will I not get paid because all of my money is not guaranteed, or am I going to get paid the injury amount in the contract? All kind of technical stuff. This makes sense for short term for Amari Cooper because it gives him a lot of security for this year, right? You get $10 million up front. The other $10 million is guaranteed in an escrow and gonna be dropped into your bank account at some point in time. And then you get a $5 million raise on top of that. So if you're Amari Cooper, you get a little bit of a raise, you get a little bit of security, you still get to hit the open market in free agency after this year. Now, I don't know if this came with a little bit of a understanding that the Browns will not franchise tag Amari Cooper. If they chose to do that, it's important to note the current projection for a franchise tag at wide receiver is like, what, $26 million, which it's not that far off from what they have here. The issue with the franchise tag is rarely the money part of it, right? Usually the franchise tag, because it's constructed by ownership, the money is fair to ownership unless you're talking about franchise tagging somebody 2 or 3 years in a row. So the money part of the franchise tag isn't the issue that people have with it. The people part of the franchise tag is the issue that people have with it, right? There is this idea that you're kind of holding somebody hostage. There's a whole media element that you're going to have to deal with when you have a player playing in the tag. It's a very stressful thing to have a player playing the tag, not just for the player, but also for the team as well. So teams really prefer not to do it if it's avoidable. But with Amari Cooper, that's something to keep in mind. If the Browns do feel the need to keep him after next year, they could bring him back on the franchise tag, which would be about $26 million, and a very similar deal to what they're paying now for Amari Cooper. Now, I don't know how this deal is going to be structured, what the cap hit's going to be if the Browns took this as an opportunity to add some void years to lower the cap number. But what is obvious is that the Browns use their ability to say, hey, we can give you $10 million right now to kind of accelerate this process and get Amari Cooper into camp. Again, this is a deal that Amari Cooper can play on and be happy about in 2024. And if he does have a great year, he can get the $28 to $30 million on a multi-year deal that he wants from somewhere else. And I think that's a good deal for both sides. It's also important to remember that with Amari Cooper, when we traded for him, the idea was that you were going to keep him under contract for 2 years. And then after that, you would lose him. Browns are keeping him now, for a third season. So I see this trade as a absolute 1,000% win for Amari Cooper and a win for the Cleveland Browns. So that's another thing to take note in. You get Amari Cooper back for training camp. Now that Amari Cooper is signed, we got to talk about what this means for other people, right? We talked about Amari Cooper's future. We talked about all of that. Let's talk about what this means for other wide receivers' futures, right? Because if Amari Cooper, which it looks like won't be back next year, does that mean the Browns draft the wide receiver in the first round? Does that mean the Browns go out and try to get a wide receiver in free agency? What does that mean for the future of the wide receiver room? What we know right now is that they drafted Cedric Tillman, Jamari Thrash is in there somewhere, David Bell is in there somewhere, and they traded a good amount to get Elijah Moore and then extended Jerry Jeudy. So I would imagine that Elijah Moore, no matter what he does this year, is probably not going to be that expensive. So they're probably going to bring back Elijah Moore. They already extended Jerry Jeudy. Now, the Browns, it depends on where they're at. If they feel like they're on the cusp of a championship or they just won a championship, like if they're on that level of win now again, then they're probably going to be aggressive about replacing that wide receiver position. If it's anything other than that, I would expect the Browns to not be as aggressive about the wide receiver situation and about a couple other situations that are upcoming with this team, right? We talk about it with guard, Wyatt Teller, Joe Bitonio look like they're going to need to be replaced soon. Right now, you got a replacement for one, but not necessarily two of them. You got a lot of other things that are seemingly coming up for the Cleveland Browns when it comes to contracts and things that you have to deal with. And it really just depends on where the Browns feel like they're at organizationally. Do they feel like they're going to be a championship contender? Do they feel like if they give it their all, they have a real chance to win the Super Bowl? Or do they feel like, hey, we can give it our all and delay some things, but we're going to end up with a ceiling that's below championship? If they feel like they're anywhere close to that, then they're going to make some moves to reload for a window where they can have another opportunity where they feel like they can win a championship again. So a lot's going to depend on what they do with the wide receiver room in the future, on what happens this season and how they feel about this season. Now, when we talk about contracts that are next, we know that wrong D-Hop, Dustin Hopkins has gotten paid. So now we're just looking at JOK as far as people who need to be re-signed. I fully expect JOK to be handled in season if it's going to be handled at all. Similar to the Grant Delpit situation. When Grant Delpit got that contract, it was because the Browns saw some sparks last year, but really wanted to see it carry over from one year to the other to give him a long-term deal. Same thing with JOK. They saw some sparks last year. I think they're going to wait to see it carry over, and then they're going to offer him a long-term deal. Linebackers don't make that much money, so I don't expect the money to be crazy. I just think the Browns, before they offer a long-term deal, want to be really sure that the player is showing what they think it's showing and not just, having a hot couple of games. The Browns are very pragmatic when it comes to that. So I really wouldn't be concerned about JOK's contract status until we get to like the bye week. And if we get past the bye week and we still haven't heard a single thing, then it would be time to start speculating on that. But I would think that this is going to be something similar to how the Browns handled Grant Delpit last year. One thing that I haven't heard a lot of people mention that I think now should be mentioned, because before I thought that there was reasons this didn't happen that were related to the news that broke today. But the one thing I think that a lot of people should start bringing up now is the Deshaun Watson restructure. It's been that one thing we've been expecting to drop all summer that has not dropped all summer. And there might be a number of reasons for that. One of the reasons I thought could have been at play for why the restructure hadn't happened yet is that they were working out deals with Dustin Hopkins. They were working out this restructure / new deal with Amari Cooper. They were working out a deal with Jerry Jeudy. And when you're working contracts out, you don't want to restructure Deshaun Watson's contract yet, because you don't want to basically open up a bunch of cap space while you're in the middle of contract negotiations. Because if you open up a ton of cap space, and we're looking at this from the team's perspective, right? If you're the team and you open up a ton of cap space, what you are signaling to everybody you're negotiating with is that there's a lot more money to get. So it's harder to get the terms that you want when you got a bunch of cap space behind you. But when Deshaun Watson's contract is still not restructured, that means that cap space is not there, which means you can negotiate the deals that you want to negotiate. You take away leverage from the agents when you do that. So I understood why the Browns had not, given the amount of contracts that they were working over this offseason, had not restructured Deshaun Watson. But now there's really nothing there. Like, the JOK deal is not something that you would hold back restructuring for. So now you're at the point where it's like, hey, if you're going to restructure, it should probably happen within the next few weeks. So keep an eye on that. I think the Deshaun Watson restructure is on the clock. Now, some of you might ask, hey, if the Browns can go into the season with Deshaun Watson at his current number and be fine with it from a salary cap perspective, why would the Browns be interested in restructuring? And that's a good question. The reason the Browns would still want to restructure, despite the fact that they could go into the season with Deshaun Watson at his current, $64 million cap hit, is because if you restructure that money and you push it down the line, you make the overall cap percentage hit of that entire contract much less over the life of it, right? Remember, the assumption is that the salary cap goes up every year. So the more money you push down the line, it's like putting money on a credit card with reverse interest. So instead of paying to bring out money or paying interest on money, you're getting paid interest on money. So it makes more sense to push it down the line if that player is a part of your long-term plans, because any money that you kick down the road can just be moved, manipulated, and restructured if that player is still in your long-term plans. Now, there's two things that could change that. One is related to Deshaun Watson, one is not. One thing that could change that's not related to Deshaun Watson, and that's something that might be on the table, is that the Browns have some kind of forecast that's telling them that revenues aren't going to go up the way that they think they are. Maybe it's the Sunday ticket thing. Maybe it's something else, but maybe somewhere in their forecast, they're getting, hey, the cap does not look like it's going to rise. We might want to take care of some of this money now because it's not giving what we thought it was going to give. The second thing could be that the Browns are unsure how much longer they want to tie money to Deshaun Watson, and want to really give themselves this year to figure that out, right? If Deshaun Watson plays well this year and the Browns decide that they want to give him an extension, then all of a sudden moving money down the road really ain't that big of a deal. So I think that might be where the Browns are at too. But that's something to watch. The Deshaun Watson restructure as a consequence of this situation being over. But that's Amari Cooper. He signed. He will be at camp and he will be a Cleveland Brown for 2024. As far as anything after that, might be the end of an era with Amari Cooper, but it was one hell of a time. And you're still going to get one more season with Coop. So that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.